right, and we're going live. Here we go.
Awesome. I'm recording. Hi, Jennifer. I see you. Oh, Nancy Bowers from
England.
England. Great to have you. Oh, but she's got to be admitted. She didn't see us yet. Okay, there she goes. All right, I'm going to get Facebook Live going. Oh, we are live, aren't we?
We're live.
Are we live on Facebook? Awesome. Okay, well, why don't we just dig right in today? Josh, you want to get us started?
Yeah, great. As we're filling up, guys, welcome again. It's June 29th. Where did June go? Getting ready for a big holiday weekend. Glad everybody can make it. Thanks again. We have a great show for you. And as we say every week, if you've been on with us before, glad to have you here. We're about to turn it over to our speaker, Condace Pressley, for the week. She's going to have some great message points. Looking forward to hearing from her. Before that, if there's any questions that you have throughout the guest or any questions, dedications, thoughts in general, please throw them up on the comment section. We'll use your comments and questions in that chat area to ask Condace either throughout or at the end. We use this time to focus pretty much on our guest speakers, so we'll try to get as many questions in as we can, and then we will follow through on the conversation on the Facebook page. So to connect with any friends we see on here or to carry on the conversation, please go to the Intrepid Spirits Facebook page and we'll meet you there. Other than that, I think we're ready to go. I can't wait. Can't wait to hear what Condace has to say, and we'll go over to you, Dill and Susan.
All right, Dill.
All right, well, welcome. The sea is dangerous, its storms are terrible, but these have never been sufficient reasons to remain ashore. Unlike timid souls, intrepid spirits seek victory over those things that seem impossible. With an iron will, they embark on the most daring of all adventures to meet the shadowy future and conquer the unknown. Today, as we look around, we must think about an old thought. Yeah, everything communicates. So let's really think about our words and our actions. This is a tall task, and I know we're all up to it. So let's really think about that. And I got one closing thought at the end. Sunshine.
Awesome.
It's all you.
Great. Well, I'm so excited to have Condace with us today. She and I actually went to the University of Georgia together at the same time, but we didn't know each other then. And I didn't know she was already trailblazing with her journalism career, where it started there. But we went to Roswell Street Baptist Church, and right after graduation, when we all moved back to Atlanta, and I got to meet her there. And she just has become a really, really dear friend of mine over the years. And Condace, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when we first got to know each other, she was always that journalist, even in our Bible study and friends groups, and she's all quiet, and I'm going, okay, what's going on in that girl's head? What she's thinking? But she was being the journalist. She was absorbing it, listening, processing, and figuring out how to communicate it. So over time, I learned that was my friend Condace, and she was a deep thinker, and she's loosened up a little bit lately in today's world, but so proud of all the things that she's done. And, you know, she's an interesting example. She actually started off at Cox and has been there her whole career and has really pioneered within that organization. And she's in a really great position today where she's in relations, I'm probably saying the wrong name, but where she can really influence the community and have a voice and help get that voice out there. And when all of the racial tensions came to light, it really made me stop and think of all the times that I've spent with Condace, and I never took the time to stop and go, I wonder how life is effective for her. And we never had those conversations. And so I wrote her a letter and apologized. And so, Condace, I'm excited to hear from you, and you tell us about your career and some of the good and maybe some of the bad that you've experienced, but how I think you have hope for the future, I think for sure. So Condace?
Susan and Dill, thank you guys so much for the opportunity to share and to be a part of the Intrepid Spirits Huddle. I did get your letter. It's right here with me. I've read it many times, and we, Susan, are yet to have a conversation about that, and I'm looking forward to it. Guys, this is really a great opportunity. What I wanted to do in our brief time together this afternoon is to share just a little bit about myself and how I came to the role that I have at WSB Television in Atlanta. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about the news and the difference between news and opinion, and the comments and the way that we are, as consumers of information, able to curate our feeds to receive information that speaks of the things that we believe in. And that, quite honestly, is not necessarily news. That is opinion, but I'll get to that in just a moment. Just a little bit about me. As Susan said, I'm a native Georgian, born and bred, grew up in Marietta, Georgia, born in the segregated wing of Wellstar Kennesaw Hospital. Yes, I am that old. And my mom is a retired nurse. My dad was a laborer. He worked in the parts department at the Ford Motor Company for his entire career. My brother and I are about 10 years apart, so our life experiences, while very similar, are also very different. For example, I started school just as the schools were being integrated in our city. And my mom and my dad did not want me to go through any problems, to have any trouble, to have to go to school too far away from where we lived. So they scrimped and saved and made sure that I had an education in a private school. And so I went to a Catholic private elementary school, K through 8, where there were only 2 students of color, me and another young man. And it was a tremendously wonderful experience. So imagine my surprise when I entered a public high school where the diversity was very different. And there were people who looked at me, and one, they didn't know me because I didn't go to school with them all the way. And then I sounded the way I sound. This has always been my voice. And they were like, "You talk white. What's wrong with you? Who are you trying to be?" And so that was a bit of a challenge in my own culture and in my own community as a high school student. And then you get to the University of Georgia, where there was tremendous opportunity, where even now today we're talking about renaming the College of Journalism and Mass Communication for Charlene Hunter-Gault. There's actually a petition for that, and there is not much opposition at the Grady College for doing that, and we will see what happens there. So I tell you all of this about me to say that I had probably one of the most interesting integrated childhood experiences, only to be introduced to everything that everybody else knew that I didn't know as I became a young adult. So I have always been a very interested person. I like to say nosy. I worked on the high school yearbook. I worked on the high school newspaper. So I knew I was going into journalism. There was a guidance counselor at my high school who thought that I was a student with great potential. And she mentioned me to one of the recruiters and the academic recruiters at UGA, who came to visit with me and said that if I would come to Georgia, my parents wouldn't have to pay anything. And that was pretty exciting. And so I said, okay. And attended the University of Georgia essentially on a full academic scholarship. Studied journalism. My major was in broadcast news. My minor was in political science. At that time, I always thought I was going to grow up to be a White House correspondent. The good news is that my passion for politics and governance lives, and I still continue to do that sort of work, and still now work in a much greater role as the Director of Community and Public Affairs for our television station. And what that means for all of you is that I'm in a position to amplify the voices of the people who are doing great work in our communities. And we do that with a television show that airs weekly on our station, and it's 30 minutes of community news. And we also do that. I have an opportunity with a 30-minute radio show that is also podcast, where I do the same. This past week, I had a conversation with the president of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, and we talked about building coalitions. That's the name of his new book, The Gumbo Coalition, and it's a leadership book, actually. It's 10 tools for anyone who wants to lead, especially in turbulent times where you have to develop relationships where not everyone might have the same goal or finish line in mind. So those are some of the things that I get to do each and every day. I started out earlier because I do want to really answer your questions. I'm way better at that than rambling on. But one of the things that Susan and Dill asked me to do in talking to you guys today was to, shed a little light on finding truth. And how do you know what is news and what isn't news? And I'm so glad to get the question, because the challenge that someone like me who's in the journalism, capital J world faces is explaining to our viewers and to our listeners and my friends that news is news. News is an account of what has gone on in your community on any given day. And so if you as a consumer of news are interested in news, then I encourage you to find a local station in your local community and watch or listen to that. Because what we get on a national level, and by national level, I mean with the cable networks, Fox News Channel, CNN, MSNBC, the Fox Business Channel, those channels, while they originally started out as news networks, quite honestly, are talk radio stations with pictures. So I'm sure many people on the call are familiar with the man who is known as the godfather of talk radio, Rush Limbaugh. I know Rush, I've known him for years. And Rush, before he was the Rush that we are aware of today, was a PR guy for a baseball team with a lot of opinions. And as radio stations back in the late 80s, early 90s were looking for ways on the AM band, because that's when spoken word formatted radio stations lived exclusively on the AM band. And for anybody, under 45 on this call, you have no idea what that is, and I'm good with that. But they were looking for content and things to draw people to the station to make sure that AM, maintained its viability. And because in many communities, and because of budgets and budget cuts and whatnot, there's either not enough going on to sustain a 24-hour, this is news, this is what's happening, without it being too repetitive. Radio, information radio, morphed into what's called talk radio. So what you get is you get a little bit of news on the hour and on the half hour, and then the rest of the hour is filled with conversation and opinion about the news of the day. Rush was the first guy to do it, and he did it successfully. And we watched across the country spoken word formatted radio stations transition into that kind of content. Well, when Sean Hannity, who was in Alabama, then came to Atlanta, and then went on to New York, he knew how this worked on the radio side, and he was the first guy on the Fox News Channel to adapt that format with pictures. So when we talk about news, if you're watching the cable channels, understand that what you're watching is talk radio with pictures. So I'm still a huge fan of our network newscast. I'm talking Dave Muir at ABC World News Tonight. I'm talking about, the nightly news with Lester Holt, talking about the CBS Evening News. Those programs and your local community news programs are where you're going to find out, without bias, without opinion, just straight down the middle, what's going on in the world and in your community today. But if you're tuning into the 24 hours, that's like listening to the radio with pictures. So those were really the big points that I wanted to make today, and then offer up time for you guys to have questions.
Great. Thank you, Condace. That's very interesting. And have some questions already coming in. Would love to read out and get your response here. So first one from Devontae Hunt, saying that he had a very similar issue growing up, enunciating differently. And in his case, it impacted his self-esteem as a teen, and still battles in some environments with that. So was this the same for you? And how did you overcome that?
I don't know. Thank you, Devontae, for the question. And I don't know that we ever actually overcome it, because on a very important Zoom call like this just last week, where I am a presenter on a pretty significant project. One of my colleagues said one of the reasons that she wanted me to lead on this call was because I was so articulate. And somebody else on the call, a person who looks like me, then sends me the text because there's the call and then there's the call that's going on during the call, and said, so are you going to correct her on this, or do you want me to? And I said, well, since you are, a senior VP of HR, I'm going to let you have that conversation. But yes, it has always been a challenge. And all I can do is, at this point, I'm 55 years old. At this point, I can just be me. And this is the voice that comes out of this body. I can remember when I first started, and I would never, ever play anybody the audition tapes when I was trying to get a job back in the late 80s, early 90s. But my friends would say when they would tell me that their dad heard me on the radio, because we were young, so nobody my age at that time listened to talk radio. We were also listening to music until we hit that point where you can only hear Hotel California so many times, and it's like, I gotta find something else. And so they thought my dad heard you on the radio, and then we would talk, and I would talk, and I had a conversational tone always. But then when I was at work, of course, I'd sit or stand up straight and project a little bit more. And somewhere in my 30s, the two morph, and this is just what it is. And yeah, it has been a challenge, and it seems like it's going to continue to be a challenge, but it just is what it is.
Got you. Great feedback, Devontae. Hope that answered your question. Got another one here, comes from Tim McGee. So how would you counter someone who claims any news from a reputable source they don't agree with is fake news? Do you have any thoughts or response there we might be able to take away?
I do, but I don't think we have enough time for that conversation.
Right.
It's interesting. And for the marketers on the call, you understand, we all understand how you say something over and over and over again, and just about the time you get tired of saying it is about the first time your audience is beginning to receive it and beginning to hear it. So there have been many in our community who have beat the drum about fake news, and just because you don't agree with what's being reported does not mean that it is not true. Facts are facts. Now, the great thing about being individuals with free choice and minds to think and to create our own opinions about things is that we have an opportunity to receive information from multiple sources. So if you are someone who has more of a conservative viewpoint, I think it's important to read and to sample content that is more on the progressive side. And between the two sides, you'll find your way to the middle, and that really is where the truth lies. We are in a really critical moment in our nation's history with the racial injustice that we're experiencing, and the fact that I think because of this pandemic, we've all been inside and forced to look at something that we might not want to see. And we're talking 401 years of systemic racism. And it's not, as I've said in meetings and on calls and to friends, it's not that this is a broken system that needs to be fixed. It's the way the system was built, and it's operating the way it was designed. So again, to the question about real news versus fake news, facts are facts. And when you find yourself receiving or consuming information that perhaps leaves you in a place of discomfort, now might be the time to sit in that discomfort for a minute or two, to think about it, to look inward. There are lots of books and things that are out there now that will help people understand things that we might not have thought about before. And then if you've got questions, find, I call them accountability partners, somebody who is different from you that you trust. And then sit down and have those conversations and work together towards a point of greater understanding. Tim, I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
Well, that's a great point, Condace. I mean, one of our really good friends who spoke last week is Dr. Grant, and they come from a little different angle of how they look at political views and stuff. And so we have really great conversations of listening and talking to each other and hearing each other's different points of view. And I think the more that we as a society could do that and try to learn from each other versus just shut down, right, would be important. I have a question. If you were talking to a young person going into journalism today, what advice would you give them?
It's the advice I give all young people that are going into the field, and that is always be a sponge. Absorb any and all information. Be present in any and all conversations, because there is something to be gleaned from all of that. Recognize that journalism is what we do as journalists is write the rough draft of American history. You go into this business to tell stories. You don't go into the business, oh, I want to be on TV, oh, I want to be on the radio. No, those are the wrong reasons to go into the business. You go into this business because you want to educate others. You want to tell stories about people and about communities. You want to shine a bright light into dark places. And you want to put that information out there so that the community, the people in your own neighborhood, whether they're reading your newspaper, they're watching your television product, or they're listening to content on the radio, receive enough information so that they as individuals can draw conclusions or want to learn more. I always caution against, getting everything from a single source. That's why in our business, when you're going to report something, you always want it confirmed by at least 2 sources, if not more.
Yeah, that's great. Josh, do we have any more from the group?
No, I think they're coming in group. Please send your comments over on the chat. We've got a few more minutes left. I would ask, I think this question might have come up last week, Condace, but being in the field where you are and getting sources and confirming news, I think is probably part of your job. How could we do that on our side if we're used to watching CNN or used to watching Fox News? What would you suggest to just a normal person to go out there, like you said, to look in different places, don't just read one site? Where would you suggest we go for that sort of rounder look at the news?
Well, absolutely. So if you're watching CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, Rachel has a point of view. Don Lemon has a point of view. Sean has a point of view. Tucker Carlson has a point of view. And I don't say that to disparage what they do and how they present things that are important to them, to audiences that are important to them, for whom their shows are important. But again, it's important to read. Really, the biggest thing is reading. It's amazing to me how many people own the fact that they don't like to read. So if you don't like to read, then listen. You can listen to the New York Times. You can listen to the Washington Post. You can listen to the Los Angeles Times. I mean, there are podcasts and other ways where you can get the content that's the written word if you're somebody that doesn't have that kind of time, but you're in your car. I don't know who's in their car these days, but if you're in your car a lot and you're moving around, where you can receive content from multiple sources so that you can see the differences in how a host presents an idea that they believe to be true. And I worked with another local talk show host for like 30 years, and I knew and he knew he was saying things that genuinely were factually incorrect and had a ginormous listening audience and following and people who swore by everything that this guy said. But what he told me was, as long as he believed what he was saying was true, then he knew that his audience would believe that what he was saying was true. So just when you're watching the opinion shows, just remember that those are the opinion shows, and know that in the newspapers, that's where the editorial pages are. So if you're reading the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the opinion is restricted to the editorial page. Everything else in the paper is reporting of what people observe and see.
Oh, it's great feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Twig.
And we've got a comment from Twig here. Not sure if you know this, but question is, does Fox pay guests for their shows, the so-called experts? Or does this happen across different channels or networks?
Yes and yes. And the way you can know that a person is being compensated, which will also differentiate between what is news and what is paid content. If someone is described as a contributor, So I'm an ex-news contributor. That is somebody who is under contract to the network to provide expert analysis and or opinion for fee. So yes, and it happens at Fox, it happens at CNN, it happens at MSNBC. So whenever you hear the word contributor or analyst, those people are being compensated for their time.
Wow, thank you.
Wow,
That
yeah.
helps. All right, well, Dill, you want to
Yeah, I can wrap it up. Hey, Condace, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, I hope everybody's out there doing well and staying safe. The one last thought I had today was as I think about what's going on, in the world. I forget where we picked this up years ago, but I have had it stuck on my wall for a while, and it's like talents plus skills plus knowledge equals strengths, and made me think a bunch the last couple of days about, so what's your strengths, and then how do you use those positively for us to move forward in the times that we're living with COVID and the whole figuring out figuring out how to treat everybody the same. How I always talk. What the heck is the matter with us? And let's straighten it out. And I think we all have different strengths that we can use to make a real positive difference. That's sort of my closing today. As far as Josh, I'm not sure, did anybody shoot in any dedications or anything?
Nothing listed yet.
Okay, well, I would dedicate this call to everybody that's on this call, to be frank. And I think that, for some weird reason, people, they come to the Facebook, they go to, and they check out what we're trying to do. But it made me really smile this morning, because there's a newspaper article that talks about Black leaders wanting a platform to speak out. And I was like, wow, we've got that here. We're trying to create, in its own way, a really special place for people to feel welcome, to feel listened, to feel appreciated. And, as Condace said, dialogue. We miss dialogue. That's what we really need. Not screaming heads at each other and all that crazy stuff. I never thought about that getting paid. That's something else, right? But, I just think I dedicate to us to just really, I hope that we're all listening and wanting to do the right thing. And, always end with, hip hip hooray,
Hip, hip,
hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. And thank you all. And Condace, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you down the road soon.
Real quick. Next week is John Majors.
Oh, yeah.
He is in the housing real estate world, and we've worked with Cousins and Warren Buffett and trying to take the Eastlake model to other markets. And so he's going to talk about housing, but housing with a heart. So housing, education, art, recreation, and technology.
Right.
So I think because one of the things, we're looking at is housing and health, and a lot of other things, education, technology, equality with all those different areas. So next week, John Majors, and I think you're going to really enjoy getting to hear from him and his perspective on how to build holistic housing for everyone. Morehouse
graduate, Harvard MBA.
Cool guy.
Cool dude. Got his went to seminary at Emory. This guy's a most well-rounded, educated person I know on the planet, actually.
Yeah, and when we lived in Atlanta, Monica and his wife, their job was to take us out at least once a month to the hip places, so we would know what's hip.
Yeah.
So we enjoyed that. All right, have a great week,
Have a good
everybody.
week.
Condace,
All right.
thank you.
God
Thank
bless.
you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Condace.